In a specific town, chosen individuals receive a divine blessing called the gift. Watching from a window, a young boy named Luke saw that the townspeople were unusually lively. Luke's father, dressed in dark attire, explained that today Luke would receive his gift. The crowd was eager to witness Luke's gift and the emergence of the next battle-ready lord. The royal family's influence had weakened, allowing many lords to seize territories. Luke, the lord's son, was thrilled at the prospect of gaining a combat gift. A person's genetics strongly influenced their gift. Luke's mother had the gift of swordsmanship, while his father possessed the even greater holy swordsmanship. Known throughout the land for his valor and strength in battle, Luke's father had risen from Viscount to Marquis in one generation. As his father placed high hopes in him, Luke smiled, sharing his father's aspirations. When the priest quieted the crowd, he revealed Luke's gift, shocking everyone. Luke, who received the gift of village building, was the most astonished and wondered about its nature. The priest, unable to clarify, only said he wasn't certain if the gift would aid in combat. As the crowd began whispering concerns about their future, another boy named Raul asked Luke to step aside, as it was his turn to receive a gift. The people grew anxious that Raul might also receive an unfamiliar gift like his brother. However, they cheered when Raul was granted holy swordsmanship. Seeing his father and others rejoice, Luke noticed his mother's disappointed expression toward him, aware of the challenges awaiting him. As Luke prepared to depart, he wasn't surprised that no one came to bid him farewell, knowing they only valued him as the Lord's son and heir. On a solitary journey, Luke headed north to the uninhabited wilderness in the House of Albert's domain. Tasked by his brother to develop the harsh, barren land, an act of exile, realizing no one opposed Raul, Luke believed they all wished for his demise. He acknowledged that Raul, always superior in combat, was better suited to be the next lord. Despite his training, Luke never desired to kill. The House of Albert had always been a warrior lineage, but Luke was an exception. After a week's travel, Luke reached his destination, finding it far worse than he had imagined. The region was enclosed by a vast forest to the north and a massive mountain range to the east. Luke needed to stay alert, as numerous creatures wandered those areas. Pondering how to tackle the many challenges ahead, Luke was startled to see Milia behind him. As Milia tried to uplift Luke, she observed that he wasn't overly distressed. Milia was impressed by Luke's optimism despite their grim circumstances. When Luke saw the carriage departing, he asked Milia if she truly wished to remain with him. Milia reminded Luke that, upon becoming his personal maid, she vowed to serve him loyally no matter the hardship. Though they shared smiles of mutual gratitude, Milia had an ulterior motive. Milia stayed with Luke because she was a passionate romantic, and Luke perfectly matched her ideal type. Milia helped Luke see he had only two paths forward. First, to strive to transform the barren land, though their food supply would last just a month, and cultivating crops in that time was impossible. Hunting was a possibility, but it carried risks. The second option was to flee with Milia and begin anew at a different city. Luke sensed Milia leaned toward the latter, as it seemed more practical, but since receiving the gift of village building, he hadn't used it, unsure of its true nature. Luke felt this was his chance to test his potential. Suddenly, a notification window appeared before Luke, startling him and causing Milia to worry that her true feelings were exposed. As Milia stood close to Luke's face, he asked her to step back. Luke noticed the text in the window was otherworldly, it's strangely familiar. Luke had vague memories of a past life, though he couldn't recall who he had been. Those memories were why Luke always felt distinct from others. Uncertain of the screen's message, Luke decided to attempt building a village. Abruptly, the ground around Luke and Milia flattened, revealing a list of constructible facilities. Luke pondered whether selecting a facility would make it appear instantly. Needing a place to sleep, Luke chose to construct a hut, and when one materialized before them, he confirmed it was his gift at work. When Luke asked Milia whether to build another hut or a well, Milia quickly recommended a well, partly because she wanted to share nights with Luke, but she also offered solid reasons for needing a water source. Milia was astonished when Luke conjured a well from nothing, thrilled about what they could build next. Milia proposed a field, and suddenly a window appeared before Luke, indicating that Milia could be added as a villager. After telling Milia about the window, she smiled and urged Luke to register her as his villager. Noticing that each villager granted him 1 point daily, Milia hugged Luke, hoping the village would remain just the two of them. As night fell, Luke recalled the despair he felt upon receiving the village-building gift, but now he realized he preferred it over a combat gift. Luke disliked war, which revolved around seizing land and killing. Determined to use his power to develop the barren land and create his own village, Luke closed his eyes, envisioning the wonderful structures he could build. He felt slight unease as Milia kept sniffing his hair. Meanwhile, a young woman named Selen told her father she was leaving home. Seeing her father's bewildered expression, Selen explained that she had reached her breaking point. She understood the harsh realities of the era, where lords married off their children for political gain. But she couldn't bear the idea of being wed to Raul, as her father insisted, since Raul was Lord Albert's heir. Selen fled, declaring she'd rather marry someone else than Raul. When guards attempted to block her path, Selen warned them they'd be injured if they tried to stop her. The guards stood paralyzed with fear, allowing Selen to walk away freely. In the barren land, Luke realized he needed to build another hut, as sharing one with Milia made sleeping difficult. He was surprised when Milia woke up at the same moment he did. When Milia stated it was her duty as a villager to rise early for her master, Luke reminded her she was now a villager, not a maid. Despite his explanation, Milia remained determined to support and assist Luke in any way possible. Observing Luke's expression, Milia recalled the day she arrived at Lord Albert's castle. As the second daughter of a low-ranking noble family, Milia would never receive a blessing, as it required hefty donations. Her options were to marry into another low-ranking noble family or serve as a maid for a prominent one. Milia chose to become a maid for the Albert family, who were swiftly amassing land and influence, but her lack of experience made the role challenging. When Milia accidentally shattered Madame Isabella's prize dish, she was shocked when Luke took the blame. After enduring Madame Isabella's lecture, Milia cleaned up the broken pieces and was amazed when Luke reassured her that his mother wouldn't be upset if he was at fault. At that moment, 3-year-old Luke won the heart of 12-year-old Milia. When Luke amassed 20 points, he was thrilled to build a field. Milia warned him that fieldwork was demanding, but Luke, eager to work with his own hands for his village, refused to be sheltered. Seeing the intelligent, kind, and endearing Luke strive, Milia felt overwhelmed with affection. Luke reminded Milia of the seeds she had impulsively scattered at night. Exhausted after creating the field and planting, Luke, while bathing, heard an odd noise from the forest. Deciding to set up defensive facilities, as he couldn't assume they'd always be safe, Luke built the watchtower. Day after day, he labored to construct whatever he could for the village. A few days later, both Luke and Milia were overjoyed to see the field sprouting. Hearing the same noise from the previous night, Luke wondered if it was a beast. As Milia climbed the watchtower to investigate, she realized her position might reveal her undergarments to Luke. Her heart raced at the thought of him noticing. But she was slightly disappointed when Luke looked away. When Milia identified the cause, she reported that a group of goblins was approaching. With no other choice, Luke charged toward the goblins' location. As a goblin attempted an attack, Luke felt confident, noting their lack of speed. Defeating them one by one, he froze when a goblin with a knife nearly killed him. Fortunately, Selen saved Luke by hurling an object through the goblin's head. The rescuer was Selen Bada, known as the Ice Blade Princess, daughter of a count, gifted with jewel-wielding and Levin's magic, enabling her to fight with 2 blades and wield water and ice magic. Selen was also Luke's former fiancée. Luke asked why Selen was at his village, and she was astonished at how much he had matured after 2 years apart. Luke was stunned when Selen revealed she had fled her family, unable to believe she had severed ties with them after learning of her situation. Selen was being pressured to marry Raul, but she was so opposed to it that she'd rather rip than go through with it, which made Luke nervous since he didn't know she felt that way. Selen was surprised when Luke apologized for setting up her marriage to his family, and she explained that she refused to marry Raul but would be okay marrying Luke. When Selen tried to share her feelings, Milia quickly kneed her and told Selen to stop the private conversation. Seeing Selen's confusion, Milia introduced herself as the first villager, which confused Selen further. Milia clarified that they were in Luke's village, where she was the first resident. Selen grew worried upon learning Luke was sent to develop a barren land, or was amazed to see a mud wall, watchtower, well, and crops. Noticing Selen's puzzlement, Luke said it would be easier for her to see how they built everything. When Luke constructed a storehouse, Selen was shocked as it appeared out of nowhere. Luke explained that his gift allowed him to build facilities, though with some limits, yet he could still create most of what they needed. Selen was even more impressed by Luke's incredible gift. Luke then saw a notification to make Selen a villager, but thought it wasn't wise to have her in such a barren place. He wondered if Selen would be okay, knowing the House of Albert wouldn't stay quiet about the engagement issue, and the House of Bajada, lacking military power, would stir more trouble since marrying their children would keep them from becoming enemies of House Albert. Selen assured Luke that the Alberts wouldn't waste energy being upset with the Bajadas, confident that if the Bajadas made more enemies, they'd be surrounded. Selen also knew her family would be fine because her younger brother had just received a strong gift. After evaluating the village, Selen decided to stay, surprising Luke. He was even more shocked when Selen became a villager without him confirming the option. Luke's frustration eased slightly when he noticed his daily points increased to 12. He told Selen that with her gifts, she could find a better place to live than his village. When Selen asked if her presence would cause problems, Luke couldn't answer directly as he had other intentions for her. A tense aura came from Milia, and the two women stared at each other fiercely. Luke was curious why they were so hostile at their first meeting. Milia told Selen they lacked showers and proper beds, pointing out it would be tough for Selen, who came from a noble family. Selen countered that they needed her to fend off monsters like goblins. Acknowledging Selen's point, Milia reluctantly accepted her, but reminded her that, as the first villager, she was Fersinga. Thinking Milia was trying to dominate her, Selen was offended when Milia said she felt sorry for her, implying it was just about shoulder size. Selen tried to argue the difference between being cool and having a larger cup size, but stopped talking after losing the debate. As night fell and they prepared to sleep, Selen was shocked to see how close Milia and Luke were, wondering if they always slept in such a cramped space. Milia glared at her, asking if she had an issue, and suggested Selen sleep outside since she didn't want to force her into their hut. As the two women argued again, Luke regretted not building another hut. When he offered to sleep in the storehouse, Selen and Milia insisted the others should take it instead. When Luke decided to go to the storehouse, both women stopped him, agreeing to share the hut. As they slept quietly, Luke, uncomfortable, couldn't sleep at all. Years ago, when Selen was 10, she visited Albert Castle, where her father reminded her she'd meet her future husband, but she didn't care. While walking the estate grounds, she saw a rock thrown toward her and spotted Rawl in the bushes, mistaking him for Luke. She was shocked to see another child tied up, about to be struck by Rawl, who aimed for the child's face. Selen rushed over, demanding to know what Rawl was doing, warning him he could endanger the child's life. Rawl, undeterred, threw the rock, but Luke appeared, locking it with his head. Selen, alarmed, tended to Luke's bleeding head as Rawl fled, claiming Luke wasn't his target. Selen later learned Rawl was Luke's younger brother and felt relieved the kind boy was Luke. Years later, when Selen and Luke met again, she asked if Luke ever told his father about Rawl's bad behavior, but Luke didn't want to further damage his brother's reputation, as Rawl, a concubine's son, was already judged harshly. Selen was glad she was betrothed to the kind Luke, not his bad brother. Now Luke was thrilled, having saved 50 points to build a small house, eager to end the discomfort of sleeping between Milia and Selen in the tiny hut. After building the house, they explored inside, amazed by the furniture. Selen and Milia, intrigued by their first sight of a modern kitchen, listened as Luke explained its features, with Milia excited that cooking would be easier. Luke enthusiastically showed them the bathroom, demonstrating the toilet, but froze when Selen asked where the waste went. Both women speculated, assuming servants handled it, imagining a greater power behind the toilet's function. Selen was thrilled they no longer needed the outdoor well, while Milia felt disappointed, realizing she couldn't watch Luke bathe at night. Luke revealed the house had 2 bedrooms, allowing separate sleeping arrangements, but Selen and Milia, not wanting to share a room due to their tension, were stunned. Recalling their conflict, Luke decided they would all sleep in the same room. Luke intended to sleep on the floor while Selen and Milia alternated on the bed, but he felt uneasy as all 3 ended up cramped together on it. Milia opposed Luke sleeping on the bed, while Selen was willing to take the floor but refused to sleep next to Milia. With no better solution, the 2 women agreed to share the bed, leaving Luke feeling suffocated until he wriggled free, unable to sleep comfortably. A month had passed since Luke began developing the barren land, and thanks to his village-building gift, progress was smooth. Selen impressed Luke by presenting a boar she hunted in the northern forest, though Luke worried about the dangers there. Selen admitted the forest was risky but safe if one stayed near the edges, adding that her ice magic could preserve food and boasting about securing more meat, casting a smug glance at Milia. Unfazed, Milia retorted that she had been handling food preparation and mocked Selen's lack of cooking and butchering skills. As Selen tried to demonstrate her butchering knowledge, she noticed something catching Luke's attention, a voice from a distant group. Luke was amazed to see people approaching and, observing they were mostly women and children, concluded they posed no threat. Noticing their weary appearance, Luke recalled a recent battle and assumed they were refugees. Knowing the surrounding wasteland lacked food and water, Luke, moved by compassion, welcomed them to his village. A frail man named Burleth, surprised to learn Luke led the village, introduced himself as the group's leader. Seeing their exhaustion, Luke offered well water, and the group, astonished by the unfamiliar well, eagerly drank to refresh themselves. When Luke noticed some still waiting, he built another well, surprising the group who hadn't seen it earlier. He quietly asked Milia to prepare the boar Selen hunted. As the group rested, Burlet explained they had abandoned their village after most men were drafted, and the elderly stayed behind to avoid being a burden. Burlet's father, the village head, remained and appointed Burlet as leader. The group wandered aimlessly until, nearly out of food and water, they stumbled upon Luke's village by chance. Luke wanted to provide ample food, but the crops weren't ready, so he offered the boar meat Selen hunted. As the freshly cooked meat was served, Burlet and his group ate, cried, and expressed joy at the delicious meal. Overwhelmed with relief that his group had survived, Burlet tearfully thanked Luke. Luke, aware that Burlet's group still faced challenges, knew surviving in the wasteland would be nearly impossible for them. Luke took a bold step and invited Burlet and his group to settle in his village, explaining that they needed help with fieldwork. Burlet was concerned, as his group consisted mostly of women and children, and Luke acknowledged that their current supplies would struggle to feed everyone. He admitted they had been relying on wheat and seeds from the castle, as he, Selen, and Milia hadn't produced enough to thrive in the wasteland. Luke earnestly asked for Burlet's assistance, and moved by Luke's sincerity, Burlet agreed to join. While the group rested, Luke was startled when multiple notifications appeared, signaling that Burlet's caravan of 51 people had become his villagers, granting him a flood of benefits from his gift. Initially overwhelmed by the flood of notification screens, Luke was amazed as he scanned through them, curious about the skills displayed. He later discovered he had earned a significant number of points, expanding his village's area. When he noticed a skill notification and experimented by moving his finger, he was thrilled to find he could easily rearrange facilities, a highly practical ability. Relieved that he no longer needed to stress over facility placement, Luke saw Burlet trembling, terrified as buildings shifted on their own, and Burlet fainted, convinced he was delirious from exhaustion. Luke explained that this was his gift, and his new villagers were awestruck, as it was their first time witnessing such an ability. Luke realized common folk rarely saw gifts and felt warmed by their kindness, a stark contrast to his treatment at the castle. While sharing his gift with the children, he felt a pang of sadness when they expressed hopes for gifts like holy swordsmanship, a common desire for combat abilities. To house his new villagers, Luke built a row house with 5 living spaces, each with 2 rooms and a dining area, spacious enough for a family of 5. Since the rooms lacked baths, Luke planned to add one but found it wasn't an option in his facilities. He apologized, explained they'd need to use a well for bathing, and noted that one row house, costing 80 points, could accommodate 25 people. Luke decided to build more after expanding crops and reinforcing village walls, but he was exhausted as his village points dropped to 214. The villagers marveled at the large crops and houses, and Luke told them they could start working tomorrow as he needed rest. Relieved that his new villagers seemed kind, Luke recalled a skill called Assess Villager, and was surprised when it displayed a villager's information. Feeling uneasy about accessing private details, he noticed a gift in the notification and asked the villager if he had one. Learning there were no churches nearby to grant blessings, Luke wondered if a blessing could awaken a gift. When he shared the skill with Milia and Selen, they were excited but unsure how it worked. When Selen asked Luke to use the skill on her, he shared her stats, leaving her puzzled. Selen asked Luke what village loyalty meant, and he explained it as the sense of pride and commitment villagers feel toward the community, warning that those with low loyalty might commit crimes or rebel, so caution was needed. After understanding the Assess Villager skill, Selen suggested using it on everyone to ensure they had enough manpower to manage their growing village. Luke hesitated, not wanting to invade the privacy of those who preferred to keep their information private. Selen urged him to see that his skill could be crucial for village safety and that he didn't need to disclose the assessments. When Selen proposed checking Milia, she grew nervous, asking if the skill could read minds, and sensing Selen's curiosity about her thoughts, Milia left the room to avoid revealing her secret. Assuming Milia was just tired, Luke visited Burlet and asked for his personal details, explaining that he was collecting information to assign jobs more effectively. Burlet shared his details and introduced his younger brother Barloth. Luke methodically gathered information from all the villagers and was astonished to discover 4 individuals, including Barloth, with potential gifts. When Selen checked on Luke's progress, she was thrilled to learn about the 4 with gifts, and explained that only a church or someone with an oracle gift could awaken them. But their lack of funds for donations frustrated her. Luke recalled learning that 50% of nobles had gifts, while less than 1% of commoners did, yet their mostly commoner village had 4 gifted individuals. He wondered if it wasn't a coincidence, and if people were misled to believe commoners rarely had gifts, suspecting that the high cost of church donations prevented commoners from discovering their potential. Luke pondered possible corruption between the church and nobles but questioned if he was overthinking. Milia interrupted his thoughts, shocking him by dousing herself with water. When he asked what was wrong, Milia tore her clothes and told him to inspect her, claiming she no longer hid suspicious feelings. Confused but agreeing, Luke used his skill on her, and Selen, finding it amusing, asked him to read Milia's information aloud. They were all stunned to learn Milia had the dormant gift of an oracle. 3 days after welcoming new villagers, they knew Milia's oracle gift remained inactive without a church to provide a blessing. And Luke heard that gifts could awaken after years of prayer, but they lacked a church. Burlet informed Luke that the vegetables he planted were nearly ready to harvest, marveling at their size, unlike anything he'd seen. When Burlet suggested the soil might be the reason, Luke smiled, recalling that his field had high-quality soil benefits. As they harvested, Burlet was amazed by the abundance, and the villagers praised the vegetables' taste. Grateful for the help, Luke decided to hold a celebration for the new villagers and the successful harvest. When Luke and Selen offered to assist with cooking, Milia was moved by Luke's willingness to tackle simple tasks. Despite being the village leader, as she started to praise him, she quickly stopped him, pointing out he was cutting vegetables wrong, and suggested he wash them instead. Selen, eager to contribute, showed off her slicing skills, but accidentally cut the entire table, irritating Milia. While Luke and Selen worked in the kitchen, Milia served the food for the celebration, and the villagers, thrilled by the rare feast, looked at Luke expectantly. Curious about their gazes, Luke learned they wanted him to give a toast. After thanking everyone for the harvest, he delivered a heartfelt toast to kick off the celebration. Burlet and his brother, savoring the food, were amazed that such quality crops could grow in a wasteland, praising Luke's facilities while admitting their initial doubts about his gift. Luke's attention shifted when villagers reported a group approaching, spotted from the watchtower. Burlet recognized a familiar face and called out, explaining to Luke that they were from a neighboring village they often traded with. Noticing their exhaustion, Dronzer, the group's leader, shared that their village was no longer sustainable, forcing them to leave. Impressed by Burlet's resettlement, Dronzer was surprised when Burlet clarified they had only arrived days ago and introduced Luke as the village head. Initially confused, Dronzer warmly shook Luke's hand and presented himself as the refugees' leader. Seeing their fatigue, Luke invited them to enjoy the food and party, reassuring the hesitant ones that any friend of Burlet was welcome. The day ended with everyone enjoying the festivities. The next morning, Luke was greeted by his new villagers and noticed Burlet and Dronzer working diligently, predicting another successful harvest. Dronzer's group of 44 decided to stay, delighted by the food and shelter, bringing the village total to 97 people. Luke built more row houses and added 4 fields to ensure enough vegetables, maintaining a food surplus thanks to the quality harvest. Like Burlet's group, Dronzer's was mostly women and children, with 4 having potential gifts, though they couldn't activate them without a blessing. Pleased with the village's growth, Luke was alerted to another group of possible refugees, about 70 people, approaching. Suspecting the war's far-reaching impact, Luke felt uneasy. While he had confidently offered Burlet's group a home, the responsibility of supporting 97 villagers made him wary of taking in another large group, as he was accountable for everyone's well-being. Luke feared that taking in more refugees could endanger everyone, and seeing his hesitation, Selen pointed out that their village was already full, with no rooms left, and accepting more people would strain their resources. She emphasized that even with Luke's remarkable gift, there was a limit to how many he could support, offering to handle the refugees herself to spare him the tough decision. When Luke tried to intervene, Burlet and Dronzer agreed with Selen, urging him to let them deal with the newcomers. Milia comforted Luke, assuring him everything would be fine and that she'd always support him. As Selen and Milia began arguing again, Luke realized Selen's point but felt he'd regret turning the refugees away. Determined to make choices that wouldn't harm those under his care, he asked for everyone's support if things went wrong. And inspired by his resolve, Milia and the others pledged their help. Luke met with Loun's caravan, a group of 76 refugees, pushing the village population over 100 and raising the village to level 4. This granted Luke 1,000 village points, more facilities, expanded land, and a new skill called Facility Upgrade. With the extra space, Luke added row houses and wells, marveling at how the village's land more than doubled with each level up, though he refocused on a key priority: building a church. A church could enable blessings, typically exclusive to church officials, so Luke built one, feeling nostalgic as it reminded him of when he and Raul received their gifts. Milia noted a stronger spiritual feeling in the church, and Luke suggested her faith might awaken her gift. Excited to help, Milia vowed to pray day and night, using his facility upgrade skill. Luke enhanced storehouses in fields, optimizing space and harvests, and replaced plaster walls with stone and small houses with medium ones. Days later, checking on Nilia, Luke was amazed to see her transformed. She hugged him, revealing she had awakened her oracle gift without a priest, overjoyed and grateful. Feeling it was inappropriate for Nilia to become too attached, Luke gathered the villagers and announced that everyone had the potential to receive a gift. The villagers were skeptical, believing only nobles could receive gifts. But Luke explained that some families were more likely to have them, regardless of status. Acknowledging their doubts, he encouraged them to try, and Nilia called Barlet forward, granting him the gift of swordsmanship. Barlet felt a strange sensation, exciting the crowd, some of whom suggested crafting him a wooden sword. Luke offered Barlet his own sword, knowing it would serve him better. And though Barlet had never wielded one before, he felt natural holding it. Despite his age, Barlet vowed to grow strong to protect the village, sparking enthusiasm. Nilia awakened the dormant gifts of others with potential, though some were disappointed while others rejoiced, especially when a 13-year-old received holy swordsmanship. Of the village's many residents, only 17 had potential gifts, and since 4 were children, Luke decided not to awaken theirs yet, as it could harm their developing bodies. As Luke and Nilia distributed gifts, he hoped the enhanced food supply and defenses would bring peace of mind. Watching Barlet and Perun spar, Luke and Burlet were impressed by their rapid progress, and Burlet felt envious, recognizing the unique power of gifts. Luke realized why his father was so fixated on them achieving holy swordsmanship. Selen, proud of her students, planned to take them hunting next time, making Luke jealous since she'd become a teacher despite being his age. The village women reassured Luke that his role as village head was just as impressive, though their flood of compliments left him conflicted. With a 2-to-1 ratio of women to men, most married women had husbands conscripted, and as the village grew livelier, Burlet thanked Luke for his efforts. Luke's attention shifted when he learned more terrified refugees were approaching. A refugee explained they'd been attacked by thieves, escaping after some were killed and others abducted. Selen noted the tragedy but warned that their arrival meant the village now shared their problem. The refugees apologized, revealing they might have led the thieves to the village, leaving Luke frozen, unsure how to respond. Meanwhile, Bar, a thief gang member, was frustrated after being scolded by his boss, as his main task was kidnapping refugees to sell to slave traders. But Bar was frustrated after some escaped due to his small mistake while tracking them. Surprised to find a village in the barren land, Bar assumed it was an easy target, seeing only women and children. His confidence stemmed from his gang's efficiency, driven by his gift for telepathy. Using it, he contacted Satan, reporting the escaped refugees and the refugee village he discovered. As Bar surveyed the village, Luke felt an odd sensation and received a notification of an intruder. When Luke told Selen his ability had detected someone, she was thrilled, noting it would help keep the village safe. Informed of the intruder's location, Selen sensed an eerie silence, suspecting the gang was scouting and hiding their presence. She told Luke to stay back, unsure of the intruder's exact position, but was stunned when Luke pinpointed it. Bar, shocked that his location was exposed, tried to flee but seeing only children had spotted him, attempted to attack. Selen swiftly froze him. Bar was awakened by a telepathic call warning that the gang was heading to the village. Confused by the village's jail cell, Bar lied to his gang, claiming it housed only women and children, making it an easy target. An old woman Luke had spoken to earlier asked to handle Bar. Inside the cell, Selen cautioned her not to get too close. The woman, asking if Bar had a mother, told him to picture her face. Bar stifled laughter, pretending to comply. But when Selen warned the woman not to trust his tears, they were shocked as the woman, revealed as Nima with a recommended job as a torturer, struck Bar with force. Nima's demeanor shifted, demanding Bar recall his mother's smile, vowing he'd only think of her tear-stained face. As her menacing laugh filled the cell, Nima advised Luke and Selen to prepare for battle while she interrogated Bar. The gang arrived at the village, but a member grew suspicious of Bar's inconsistent responses. Another dismissed it, suggesting Bar was slacking. When some proposed eavesdropping before raiding, the boss insisted brute force would suffice, confident the village gate wouldn't hold. Charging forward, he shattered the gate with one blow, and as he led his men inside, Luke instantly sensed the gang's presence in the village. The thieves were puzzled that no one screamed despite their noisy entrance, suspecting Bar had messed up, and were shocked when they fell into a water moat. Hearing a crack, they realized the water was freezing, trapping them. Luke and the villagers appeared, amazed they'd subdued the gang without injury. assigning her students to handle the thieves. Selen froze when she heard the gang boss's voice behind her but blocked his sneak attack with quick reflexes. Underestimating Selen, the boss swung his sword relentlessly, making it hard for her to counter. As Luke watched Selen fight, he noticed the ice melting and ordered the villagers to round up the thieves. Luke froze as a thief reached for his neck, but Barlet saved him just in time. Dizzy from Barlet's grip, Luke saw Paran and Lando paralyzed with fear in their first real battle, knowing they'd rip if they fought. He told them to duck as Nima arrived to rescue them. Satan, pleased by the villagers' panic, took his eyes off Luke and Barlat and was knocked down by Luke's double kick. Luke rallied everyone to push the thieves back into the moat. The villagers, including Paran and Lando, who overcame their fear, used all their strength to shove the thieves into the water. Satan, stunned, couldn't believe novices like Paran and Lando were overpowering seasoned thieves. Seeing his boss's weapon fall, Satan was shocked to find him exhausted. Selen revealed she'd gradually cut and frozen the boss until he couldn't move, praising his strength but noting his failure to notice her strategy. Defeated and captured, Satan was incredulous that a village had bested them. The next day, using information extracted from the thieves about their captives, Luke and the villagers launched a rescue mission, miraculously saving them before they were sold, thanks to Nima's torturing skills. Their only remaining issue was the captured thieves, who Luke knew had ruined many lives. Typically, he'd turn them over to a nearby domain with proper laws, but given the refugee influx and domain's limited resources, he doubted they could handle the thieves. As he pondered his next move, a notification appeared, offering to turn the thieves into villagers or use a rehab option. Intrigued, Luke explored the notification, discovering that building a jail cell unlocked a perk to rehabilitate criminals. Luke understood that the title Miscreant Reform Villager was simply a label his gift could assign, not a mandate to treat thieves as he initially intended when planning to integrate them as villagers and assess their loyalty using the Assess Villager to monitor their reform progress. He recognized that expelling the thieves might lead to them causing harm elsewhere. Seeking the villagers' opinions, he found them unhappy with his plan, unable to move past the pain the thieves had inflicted. Burl and Donga suggested a cautious approach, proposing that the thieves be placed in a rehabilitation center first, with further steps to follow after their release. One villager trembled, feeling that justice for his harmed family would be denied. Following the discussion, some villagers left, reducing the village's population. Luke observed that villagers with low loyalty would be automatically removed if absent for too long. Nima expressed sympathy for those who had lost loved ones, but noted that their departure was inevitable if they didn't align with the village's direction. She described the village as peaceful and cooperative, unlike the chaos others brought. However, Nima's tone shifted as she warned Luke that the villagers might one day overlook his contributions and act recklessly, citing human nature. Fond of handling criminals, Nima urged Luke to proceed decisively. Agreeing, Luke stood before the thieves' cell and permitted their integration as villagers. His decisions had grown the village to over 300 residents, reaching level 5. With the rehabilitation center constructed, Luke and the others remained hopeful but uncertain of its success. To test it, Luke selected 5 seemingly compliant thieves to enter first, assigning Nima to oversee them. Though the thieves' remorseful expressions suggested they had reformed, their low loyalty status prompted Luke to have Nima remove them immediately. Next, Luke focused on repairing the gate the thieves had damaged, planning to upgrade it for better durability. Curious about new options at level 5, he gained the ability of facility customization, allowing him to modify structures using village points. He intended to add roads and waterways. Mindful of spending points carefully, surveying the village, Luke felt satisfied with its progress, noting that the water moat built to deter thieves had returned to normal. Contemplating his next project, he announced the construction of a public bathhouse for all to enjoy. After explaining its features, the villagers eagerly tried it. The men found the bath relaxing, and the women also expressed their delight. Though pleased with the positive response, Luke grew concerned as the bathhouse descended into chaos. Heading to the training area to speak with other villagers, he was quickly noticed by Selen. While instinctively deflecting Barlet's sword, Selen inquired about the bathhouse's condition when a sudden shout drew their attention to the broken training sword. Selen apologized, noting it was their last one, and revealed that only she and another villager possessed real swords, leaving them critically short of weapons. They had scavenged what they could from hunts, but the wasteland offered little of value. The villagers trained cautiously, but knew combat required boldness. When they suggested venturing farther on their next hunt, Luke expressed concern about their lack of protective weapons. As the group discussed ways to acquire arms, Luke felt frustrated, limited to building facilities. Noticing his unease, Barlet, while advising his peers, reassured Luke that their forest experience ensured safety. Barlet encouraged Luke to use his gift for personal benefit, having already given so much. Gort echoed Barlat, urging Luke to act boldly and live in a grander home, like the bathhouse befitting the village head. Selen, who shared the house, supported Gort's idea. Tyre, Pero, and Lando, still steaming from the bath, interrupted with false tales about Luke's accidental missteps, all living with Nilia and Selen. Irritated by their accusations of perversion, Luke spent 50 village points to upgrade his home to a medium-sized house. Though Selen and Nilia mourned the changes, Luke was delighted, finding the upgrade perfectly matched his vision. Many remarked that Luke's larger bed suited the village head and expressed her desire to share it, citing discomfort with unfamiliar beds. Selen objected, but Luke relinquished the bigger bed to Selen and Nilia, content with a single one. After showcasing his ability to adjust bed sizes, Selen and Nilia, feeling outdone, lamented loudly. Inspecting the stone walls, Luke devised a plan to add stairs behind them for better defense. After installing 8 staircases, he created embrasure holes in the wall. Testing one, he found the wall thicker than expected, realizing only long weapons like spears would work. Spotting Donga's face through a hole, curious about its purpose, Luke explained it allowed counterattacks during sieges. When Donga, reaching for Luke's hand, reminisced about childhood sand castles, Luke realized enemies could access the holes from outside. Acknowledging the weapon shortage, he knew Selen's ice magic alone was insufficient, and the wasteland lacked resources. Luke then decided to use his Tassili customization skill to reshape wood from a hut into a wooden sword. To Luke's surprise, the wooden sword shattered, revealing its fragility and convincing him that wood was unsuitable for crafting durable weapons. Pondering alternative materials, he recalled the iron in the jail cells. At the jail, the thieves' taunts unnerved him, but he noted the iron bar's resilience despite their kicks. Approaching a cell, he realized removing a bar risked their escape. The thieves were shocked when a new iron bar appeared before them, watching intently as Luke adjusted its size and shape. After crafting a sword from the bar, Luke grew eager to experiment with materials for the hilt, leaving the thieves in awe of his skill. Barlet and Selen were astonished when Luke revealed his iron sword, explaining how he repurposed Tassility materials using his gift. Selen, still puzzled by the process, tested the sword by sparring with Barlat, praising its perfection and boasting to others. Nima later informed Luke that the first group of thieves had reformed successfully, their high loyalty status exciting him. Surrounded by the reformed thieves, Luke was impressed by Nima's control, as she declared him their leader, transforming them into obedient villagers. Curious about her methods, Luke learned Nima initially planned to use fear, but the thieves became docile in the rehabilitation center. Requesting bolder criminals, she left Luke with his new villagers. Though skeptical, Luke couldn't deny their loyalty and Nima's endorsement, so he tasked the thieves with assisting Barlet. Nima continued reforming thieves, while hunters monitored the released ones, noting their changed personalities despite lingering doubts. Pleased with Nima's enthusiasm, Luke was startled by a sudden voice, soon identified as Satan, a telepathic thief from a disgraced merchant family. Satan, who turned to thievery to survive, confessed his crimes and pleaded for freedom, claiming he'd atone. Unconvinced by Satan's apparent reform, Luke sensed his lingering defiance. Satan, stunned by Luke's perceptiveness, persisted in feigning change while probing for weaknesses in Luke and the villagers. When Nilia entered the facility, Satan was shocked by her thoughts. Nilia was startled when Satan abruptly called her a nasty woman, but after Nima explained his telepathic gift, she grew anxious and urged Luke to send Satan to the rehabilitation center immediately. As Nima dragged Satan away, Nilia flinched when Luke asked what she was thinking, curious about Satan's shocked reaction. Nervously, Nilia lied, saying she was thinking about cleaning the toilets later. While walking through the village, Luke sensed something amiss and asked Burlet and others what was happening. He grew worried upon learning that Selen and the hunting team hadn't returned. A little girl told Burlet and Luke that the delay was due to the curse of the Alerage, explaining that the Alerage was a giant, aggressive rabbit over a meter tall with a sharp horn. On good days, hunters brought back Alerage for its valuable materials and tender meat. Showing them Alerage balls, she noted they were unusually large. Though the hunters returned with an Alerage, the girl felt uneasy as it stared at the balls she held. When she examined it closer, the supposedly hurt Alerage let out a horrific screech. Burlet speculated on possible causes, but the girl, insisting the balls were cursed, threw them at Luke and Burlet. Burlet explained that some creatures emit pheromones over miles to attract mates, suggesting the hunters, having butchered the Alerage, carried its scent. making them vulnerable to a pack of Alerage despite their gifts. Luke was about to order Burlet to send help when a watchtower lookout reported an unknown threat. Rushing to the walls, Luke and Burlet realized the hunters weren't the only ones at risk. The village might be too. Curious, the girl offered the balls as a gesture. But Luke, the only skilled fighter available, told Burlet to get everyone to safety while he stalled for time. Others suggested using the thieves for defense, but Selen, hearing the commotion, asked what was happening. Luke and the others, relieved to see her, were surprised to learn the hunters had killed 2 orcs, rare creatures capable of devastating villages, making their meat a prized delicacy. Pero and Lando eagerly asked Milia how soon they could eat the orcs, and she and others began preparing the meat immediately. Luke, unable to watch the gruesome butchering, admired their skill, liking it to a battlefield. Once cooked, the orc meat looked surprisingly appetizing, and Pero and others, tasting it, were overwhelmed by its deliciousness, rolling on the floor in delight. When Pero and Lando fed Luke some, he was equally amazed by the flavor. Luke was astonished by the savory, chewy orc meat, and Selen explained its deliciousness came from its freshness. As orcs lived deep in remote woods, the meat was cut into pieces and transported by horse-drawn carriage, but the journey diminished its flavor. Ignoring Selen's explanation, the villagers devoured the meat, and Luke, noticing the little girl's disappointment, asked Burlet what was wrong. The girl was upset that her belief in the cursed Alerage balls was mistaken. Milia offered her an Orcish ball broil, shocking Luke, who spat out his food and questioned Milia's choice. Milia clarified that the dish boosted stamina and was packed with nutrients. Burlet, having tried similar dishes with bull and horse, was amazed someone used orc. When the girl tasted it, describing it lewdly, Luke and Burlet squirmed uncomfortably. 6 months after founding the village, Luke noticed the air turning chilly, and villagers urged preparations for winter. Burlet and others expressed a desire to visit their parents, concerned for their well-being. Luke suggested inviting their parents to the village, given the available space, but Burlet doubted they'd undertake the long journey. Barlet and Selen offered to escort them, but the group fell silent when the reformed thieves volunteered to assist, even pledging to sacrifice themselves. Luke hesitated, wary of letting the thieves leave, but Selen supported their inclusion for extra strength, vowing to punish any betrayal. Reluctantly, Luke agreed, though Dong and others admitted lingering fear of the thieves. Days after the group's departure, Luke reorganized fields and built row houses to create living spaces for the reformed thieves, hoping to ease tensions by involving them in farming and defense. The thieves, grateful for Luke's thoughtfulness, promised to protect the village, and Satan earned respect using his telepathy. Tyre, intrigued by Satan's gift, asked why he became a thief, recalling Satan's story of being ousted from a merchant family. Satan explained that others found his telepathy troublesome, not useful, as it revealed their thoughts. When a priest granted him the gift, Satan grew anxious, fearing exposure. He described hearing everyone's thoughts as torturous, discovering the priest's secret abuse and a supposedly saintly girl exploiting the poor. Learning his parents planned to disown him, Satan fled, later joining a thief gang where Tyre's boss lectured him on his wrongs. Satan's boss assigned him extra chores to atone for his crimes, which Satan accepted willingly. But he collapsed after hearing Milia's thoughts. Milia shared the good news of Burlet and the others' safe return from their trip. As the elderly reunited with their families, some were shocked to learn Nima, known for her torture skills, had a husband. Seeing the older villagers safe, Luke hoped the conscripted were unharmed. He noticed some men wearing familiar clothes, and Selen explained they were thieves from a remnant gang who had attacked them. The thieves were startled when a reformed thief hinted they'd soon reform too. Meanwhile, miles away, a father and son trekked through the wasteland, tasked with finding a lord's son to survive after their village became unlivable. The father ranted about not being born wealthy, growing angrier when his son spotted something distant, thinking he was dodging the conversation. Describing stone walls, the son ran excitedly toward the village. That night, the village celebrated family reunions, and Luke, watching from his home, was delighted by their joy. Exhausted, he told Milia and Selen he was going to bed. As he slept, Selen and Milia slipped into his bed, sleeping soundly while Luke grew uncomfortable. Satan's telepathic message woke him, reporting 2 men nearing the village. Luke met them, introduced as Mac, chief of Mao village, and his son Manta. Mac asked if Luke was Lord Albert's son. Explaining he'd heard Albert tasked his son with cultivating the wasteland, or was amazed by the village's structures and crops. Doubting Luke built it in 6 months, they wondered if Albert had helped. When Luke asked their purpose, Max said they sought work for the winter due to an impending war. Thrilled by Luke's offer to stay, they speculated the war involved House Albert against House Shager, two major powers with tense relations. Luke pondered if Raw would join the conflict. Manta whispered to Mac about being too open, prompting Luke to reflect on how he'd handle holy swordsmanship, and if he'd notice others suffering. Once eager to meet expectations, Luke now saw it as foolish. Mac decided to spread word of Luke's village, and days later, Luke warmly welcomed Mao's villagers to join his community. Impressed by the village's crops, Manta dismissed rumors that Luke had a useless gift, and Luke clarified that he lacked holy swordsmanship, having been sent to cultivate the wasteland. He explained his village-building gift, which greatly aided his management of the village. The arrival of hunters with 5 alerage surprised the Mao villagers, and Selen bragged about ample winter food, proposing a feast. Curious about her boasting, Luke was stunned to learn they'd also caught a great boar, a formidable beast. The Mao villagers were astonished, and Selen detailed how Nolan Gort used shields to halt the boar, allowing her to herd it. Mac pinched Manta to confirm they weren't dreaming. As the villagers dragged the boar, Luke, noting the Mao villagers' travel fatigue, suggested they rest. When Mac asked about tent space, Luke realized he hadn't prepared housing and used his gift to create row houses. Mac and Manta were astounded as houses appeared instantly, and Luke reminded them of his village-building gift's utility. Celebrated for reaching level 6 with over 1,000 villagers, Luke felt overwhelmed by the population surge. 92 Mao villagers joined, but some newcomers exploited Luke's kindness. Reformed thieves patrolled the wasteland to ensure safe passage, likely causing the visitor influx. In a meeting about the population growth, Luke and others speculated they'd become a war target. Selen and Milia eagerly prepared to unlock hidden gifts among villagers. Luke assessed everyone, finding about 100 with gift potential, including 24 combat-related gifts, leaving 19 capable fighters after excluding children and the elderly. 2 new villagers celebrated, thinking gifts freed them from work. A burlet firmly reminded them duties remained. Luke recognized the need for community support to maximize gifts, but with limited job types, he assigned similar roles to foster unity. His main worry was low-loyalty villagers, likely to leave. Observing one such villager who seemed sociable, Luke was puzzled when a group of women confronted him about another woman. The crowd fell silent when a woman with a baby revealed the man was Mary, exposing his deceit. Low village loyalty, Luke realized, bred poor morale and sparked numerous issues, some of which the villagers took upon themselves to address. By discussing problems directly with individuals, Luke resolved several concerns early, though helping each person left him drained. Burlette encouraged him, assuring Luke the village would soon unite. Unaware it had surpassed 1,000 villagers, Luke unlocked new facility options and spotting apartments, familiar from his past life, chose to build one for its greater value over row houses. Though he hadn't altered the stone walls, each village level expanded their territory across nearly the entire wasteland. While considering new facilities beyond the walls, Luke saw Nima, visibly exhausted. When asked, she admitted struggling to rehabilitate 2 thieves. Doral, a confident boss unaffected by her methods due to his harrowing experiences, and Bar, who taunted her, claiming he'd never change. Bar's insults provoked Nima, but his strange noises during beatings revealed he was a masochist, enjoying the pain. Luke and others understood why Nima struggled. Bar thrived on humiliation. Selen suggested using pain as leverage to control Bar, attempting to dominate him with promises of rewards for obedience, but Bar spat in her face, defying her. Nima explained that masochists might appear compliant but weren't truly submissive, advising distance if one couldn't handle their tendencies. Forced to pause Bar's rehabilitation, Selen's attention shifted when Doral asked if she was Bar's Iceblade princess. Questioning her presence in the wasteland, Doral declared he only followed those stronger than him, dismissing release promises, but offering aid if Selen ever proved superior. Selen shared this with the group, proposing Doral as a potential ally for his strength, though she didn't fully trust him, suggesting he could be a last resort. Noticing Bar and Doral's status shift from mutinous to low, Luke considered Selen's idea viable. Meanwhile, he and the others observed the public bath growing increasingly crowded. Selen noted that colder weather drove villagers to seek warm baths, and Luke was pleased they enjoyed his creation, though he wished to diversify the bath types. Inspired, he used his facility customization gift to craft a winter-perfect bath, upgrading his home with an outdoor garden bath. Burlette and others marveled at Luke's new home, and he welcomed guests warmly. But Milia and Selen felt saddened, anticipating less time with him as visitors increased. When Pero commented on the open bath, Luke explained its benefits, but irritated by the remarks, pushed them in to experience it. Relaxing in the bath, Pero and others asked if Luke would join, but he smiled, prioritizing their enjoyment and savoring rare solitude without Milia or Selen. While bathing alone, Luke faintly heard voices despite the late hour, realizing his lonely days might be over. Milia startled him, offering to wash his back, reflecting on years since Luke was tasked with developing the wasteland. Together, they built a loving village, a fairy tale success, but Milia felt it was disrupted by newcomers. As the village grew, their time together dwindled, and Milia, fearing Luke's loneliness, resolved to comfort him, insisting it was for his sake, not hers. Selen intervened, chopping Milia's arm to stop her advance, leading to a heated argument in the bath. Luke tried calming them, but they ignored him. Fed up, he sternly warned them against fooling around, and shocked by his anger, Milia and Selen knelt in remorse. Meanwhile, in the northern Alba domain, Governor Dana learned an entire village had vanished. Expecting some departures due to a tax hike, he was stunned by the scale. Curious if the villagers understood the external hardships, he was told investigators heard a strange rumor. Intrigued, Dana asked about it, learning of a northern village promising safety, comfort, and abundant food. Dismissing it as a trap, recalling the area's uninhabitable state, Dana worried people might flock there. He ordered an investigation, volunteering to join if necessary, explaining his concern since the rumored area was where Lord Albert sent his son, Luke, to develop. Luke received a telepathic warning from Satan about a suspicious group watching the village, noting their calm demeanor suggested scouts rather than immigrants. Selen, seeing Luke's concern, asked what was wrong, and he alerted the villagers to the spies, urging them not to engage in conflict, confident in their strength. Selen drew resolve from Luke's words. Days later, Governor Dano and his guard were stunned to see stone walls in the wasteland, expecting a small village but finding a near city. A reformed thief questioned their presence in Dano, introducing himself as Nori's governor, requested to meet the village head. Opening the gates, Dano suspected a trap, but his knight assured safety with the elite force. Inside, Dana marveled at vast crops, including wheat growing out of season, and two-tiered stone walls, indicating significant resources. Noting the villagers' health, he accepted the village as a paradise. Luke greeted Dano, introducing himself as the head, and Dano recognized him as Lord Albert's son from a past encounter. As Dano spoke, his knight, spotting a gray boar's bones, interrupted in awe. The elite force wondered if the bones were scavenged, but Pero loudly recalled the boar's delicious taste, with others reminiscing. Burlette felt the bones undermined Luke's presence. Luke recalled the Alba domain's 20-plus governors, where loyalists or submissive existing governors managed war-won lands. Dano's late greeting led Luke to suspect he was unaware of Luke's banishment. Given Nori's proximity, Luke anticipated frequent interactions and aimed to maintain friendly ties, hosting a feast for Nori's people. Touring the village, Dano inquired about structures, and Luke explained the housing complex. Dano noted the absence of waste despite the population, and Luke emphasized their hygiene efforts. When Dano asked about another structure, Luke described the public bath, noting that while homes had baths, villagers preferred the spacious communal one. Dano's curiosity piqued, overwhelmed by the village's wonders. Governor Dano, astonished by the wasteland's transformation, asked Luke how he achieved such progress so quickly. Luke explained he used his village-building gift, revealing to Dano that he only discovered its true power after being sent to the wasteland, a fact even Lord Albert didn't know. Luke cautioned that if Dana reported the village to his father, it would cause chaos, and Dano, understanding, accepted his explanation. At the feast, Dano and his elite force enjoyed abundant vegetables and orc meat, surprising some. Milia introduced Pero and others for a swordsmanship display, but Luke and Dana were shocked by Pero and Barlet's intense fight. Luke hoped to avoid church-related topics, but the villagers' magical gifts made that impossible. After the display, Luke showed Dano to temporary quarters. When Dano asked his knight's opinion, the knight called the village's wonders an understatement, admitting that after seeing the villagers' talents, he doubted the elite force could overpower them. Noticing a church, Dana wondered where Luke found a priest, aware the church claimed authority over gifts and might act against the village. When the knight asked how Dana would report to the domain's lord, Dana shocked him by saying he wouldn't, knowing Lord Rahl would see the village as a threat and destroy it. The knight warned that hiding this could cost Dano his life, noting Dano's history of obeying orders, ignoring his people's suffering, and enforcing harsh taxes with threats. Dano expressed hope in the village's brighter future. Unaware, Satan overheard and telepathically relayed this to Luke. Selen, relieved, was prepared to intervene if the conversation had turned hostile. The next morning, Luke greeted Dano, asking if he slept well. Dano confirmed he had, apologizing for not thanking Luke earlier for accepting Nori's migrants, overwhelmed the previous day. Ashamed, Dano admitted his inaction had caused his citizens suffering. Everadano, explaining Nori's great famine and lack of resources, asked if Luke could sell him food. Luke agreed, and though Dana noted their limited funds, offering supplies instead, Luke welcomed the idea as his new village needed various items. Grateful, Dana promised to send Nori's trusted merchant guild, which had branches across the region, to streamline trade. As Dano and his elite force departed, Luke used his gift to create a paved road for carriages, astonishing the Nori group as it appeared beneath them. Days later, the hunting party returned, but Luke was surprised to see Barlot without Selen and others. Barlot explained they remained in the forest, returning only to update Luke. He reported finding injured elves, whom Selen and others were escorting to their village before heading back. The mention of elves shocked Luke and others, with Teara fantasizing about their ruvid beauty until Barlot scolded him, noting elves avoided humans due to past abuse. Luke pressed Barlot for details, learning the hunters heard yells during a routine hunt and found elves battling mad grizzlies. Joining the fight, they defeated the beasts, and seeing the elves' severe injuries, the hunters decided to escort them home. Barlot added that Selen and the others were at the elven village, likely returning the next morning. Relieved, Luke and others wondered about the elven village. When Selen returned with elves, their beauty captivated everyone, though Selen warned against staring. The elves' representative, Fanis Mauliol Leoninus Telleris, introduced herself as Philia for simplicity, visiting on behalf of their chief to express gratitude. Luke was glad Selen had eased tensions. Philia, a mesa village thrived in a wasteland, had doubted anything could grow there. As Luke offered a tour, Teara suggested starting with the bath, initially drawing disapproval until the elves' strong odor changed minds. Selen endorsed the bath plan, and all agreed. When Philia disarmed, some elves worried about vulnerability, but she assured them the villagers meant no harm, noting they'd be hurt otherwise. Luke asked Selen to guide the elves to the baths. Philia, thrilled, began changing clothes in front of Luke and headed to the men's bath. Opening the door, she startled Donga, who froze before screaming upon realizing she was a woman. Several men rushed in, shocked to see an elf, and the bathhouse grew chaotic until Selen and others restored order. Nima, hearing the noise, threatened spankings, calming the crowd. They redirected to Luke's open bath. Raphilia, delighted by the lukewarm hot spring, felt safe from cold and monsters. She and the elves soaked for nearly an hour, and Philia, still warm, thanked Luke again for their kind treatment. She admitted underestimating the mad grizzly's strength, and credited Selen's group for their rescue. As thanks, Philia gifted Luke a box of potions, which Milia and Selen recognized as rare. Luke and others praised the generational medicine, though Philia noted it couldn't restore lost lives. During a feast for the elves, Philia, surprised by the meal, saw her comrades happily mingling, relieved they were relaxing. Asking for the restroom, Philia was baffled by the toilet, nearly climbing inside, and slipped while attempting to sit due to the bited spray. Hearing her cry, others rushed to help, and the elves drew swords, ready for battle. After Philia clarified, Luke explained the bited's function, sparking her curiosity about its creation for her village. Luke admitted he didn't know how it formed, as it appeared with his gift-made toilet, disappointing Philia, who couldn't replicate it. When the elves prepared to leave, Luke noticed Philia's absence, learning she was in the restroom. Concerned she ate something bad, he checked on her, only to find her playfully experimenting with the bidet. As Philia and the elves departed, Luke saw them off, grateful for the strengthened bond. Governor Dano's tradesmen arrived unexpectedly, offering crops, clothes, and household goods in exchange for livestock, which Luke valued most. The villagers were amazed that the tradesmen readily swapped livestock for crops. Luke built a livestock shed and assigned Now, a recommended breeder, and others to care for the animals. When Luke and Tear expressed excitement about milk and eggs, a cow recently heartbroken per Now glared disapprovingly at their comments. Meanwhile, an elf chased by an orc in the forest faced peril. The village, enriched by the traders' resources, enjoyed fresh eggs for pancakes and new clothing, no longer repurposing bedsheets and curtains. Milia and Selene were optimistic about the village's future when Luke received a telepathic alert from Satan about an approaching elf. The elf, upon entering, urgently requested help, explaining that orcs had attacked their village, driven aggressive by food scarcity. Despite fighting back, the elves were overwhelmed and ordered to flee while others delayed the orcs. The elf had raced to Luke's village for aid. Luke instructed Satan to invite all elves to seek refuge and inform the villagers. The elf, touched by Luke's swift kindness, expressed gratitude, and as Luke's goodwill grew, so did his territory. Eager to save the elves but unsure of Philia's location, Luke hoped they were within his domain. As an orc nearly seized Philia, a stone wall knocked it back, and Luke's voice assured her of their support, guiding the elves to safety. Luke urged Philia to take refuge, but she apologized for needing more help. Luke, Sullen, and others prepared for the orcs, alerted by a watchtower villager spotting 30 of them. With no alternatives, Sullen and the villagers fortified defenses. Luke directed Philia to lure the orcs to the village, and though she worried for their safety, the walls formed a narrowing path. Philia assumed Luke planned to fight the orcs singly, but as she passed, Luke used his customization gift to crush the orcs between the walls. The villagers rejoiced after defeating the orcs, but Philia, stunned by Luke's wall-crushing tactic, could only laugh in awe of his abilities. Though the immediate threat was gone, danger lingered in the forest. After eliminating the remaining orcs, Luke assured Philia of their safety, and while treating the injured, asked if orcs were always aggressive in that season. Philia explained that orcs typically didn't target elves, finding them unpalatable, but population growth made them less picky. Luke decided to heighten hunting precautions. Philia warned that the village could be at risk with so many orcs nearby, but Sullen, urging optimism, boasted of their strength, boosting Philia's confidence. She mused they could even handle an orc king. Suddenly, a deafening roar shook the wasteland, and a massive orc king charged the village. Regretting their bravado, Sullen and Philia watched as Luke's attempt to build a wall failed, the orc king shattering it with its speed. Having depleted his points fighting earlier orcs, Luke braced for defeat. A loud clash startled him as Gort and Noel engaged the Orc King, but even their gifted strength faltered. With the village on the brink of destruction, Luke turned to Satan for help. Despite the combined efforts of elves and villagers, including Sullen's strikes, the Orc King's tough hide resisted damage. Pero and Lendo's sneak attack failed, swatted away, and Barlat, intervening to save Lendo, could only dodge. As Pero and Lendo supported Barla, the Orc King flung them aside, sapping village morale. A familiar voice challenged their weakness, and Doral, the jailed thief, appeared, shocking Sullen. He explained Luke had used Satan's telepathy to summon him, honoring his promise to aid if needed. Luke admitted they were out of options, betting on Doral. Praising Luke's gamble, Doral, thrilled to face an Orc King, charged into battle. Doral narrowly dodged the Orc King's swat, which intimidated him as dust clouded the area. Sullen and others feared Doral had been struck, while Pero and Lendo despaired, unable to see him. Emerging from the dust, Doral landed a surprise headbutt, staggering the Orc King, the first time it faltered. Seizing the moment, Satan urged everyone to attack while the beast was dazed. Though stunned at Doral, a former thief, created this chance, the villagers gratefully took turns trapping and striking the Orc King with spears and swords. Barlet's attack gave Sullen an opening to use her ice magic, slowing the creature. As the Orc King tired, Luke received his daily points. Ordering everyone back, he used the points to encase the Orc King in a stone cage. Lendo's premature celebration faltered as the Orc King's powerful blows persisted inside. Knowing the cage wasn't enough, Luke upgraded the wall's strength and built a new facility atop the cage, removing the ceiling to crush the Orc King, naming the move Facility Crush. Sullen confirmed the beast's death after inspecting its body, and the villagers cheered their victory over the formidable monster. Luke thanked Doral, but pondered his future role. An elderly elf approached, asking if Luke was the chief, introducing himself as Leoninus Mellald Renus El Tabola, the elven village leader. Luke found the name lengthy and was surprised when Leoninus and the elves knelt, apologizing for endangering Luke's village by seeking aid. Luke reassured them, confident the elves would have helped if orcs targeted his village, and offered barbecue to the hungry, exhausted elves. As villagers anticipated another feast, Leoninus seemed puzzled. Philia explained Luke's generosity, assuring her father no one blamed them. Convinced, Leoninus declared peace with Luke's village, accepting their kindness to strengthen ties. When Leoninus offered to cook, Miliad nearly responded, but noticing the elves' odor, suggested they try the bath. Leoninus and the elves relaxed in the warm water, grateful for the hospitality. The elves, basking in the warm bath after defeating the Orc King, never imagined such luxury. Leoninus, however, questioned the appropriateness of accepting such generous hospitality after their unintended burden. After bathing, they savored delicious meat at a celebratory feast, though Doral was returned to jail. Leoninus praised Luke's village, confirming its ruvid greatness, and thanked him. An elf reported their village's severe devastation, and when Leoninus planned to rebuild before winter, Luke offered refuge until their village was restored. Ashamed to accept more aid, Leoninus relented after Luke's reasoning, privately burdened by the added reliance, especially upon hearing a miraculous village treasure. When Philia announced their return to rebuild, Milia and Sullen, disappointed, hoped they'd stay longer. Philia, grateful but determined, insisted on leaving to face beasts en route. Luke proposed an underground tunnel for safe travel, surprising Philia, who questioned its feasibility given the distance. Luke swiftly created a tunnel reaching the elven village's outskirts, impressing Philia, though his control limited further extension. He'd forgotten his location-seizing skill, rarely used, but saw its value for the elves, offering to connect the tunnel directly. Luke delighted Philia and others. Assessing their ruined village, Philia doubted they could keep beasts out. When Luke offered more help, Philia declined, wanting to rebuild independently. Luke, accustomed to his gift's ease, realized he'd overlooked others' desire for self-reliance, wondering if his villagers felt similarly. Philia and the elves, relieved by his restraint, secretly wished to stay longer. Meanwhile, Milia gathered gift-bearers, proclaiming Luke as a divine chosen one destined to save the world, hinting at his untapped potential. With a fanatical gaze, she urged them to dedicate themselves to Luke's cause, subtly manipulating the crowd. The village thrived, and everyone cheered loudly for Luke at Marcus Albert's. In a confined territory, a group of people was trapped in a cage. Lord Albert's retainer asked Rawl if he was prepared, and after Rawl agreed, he stepped out, only to be mocked by the caged criminals for his youth. These criminals, unsure if Rawl was their opponent, were told by guards they could use any tactics to win. Some, unaware of Rawl's past, questioned why he was fighting them. As the fight started, silence fell when Rawl swiftly defeated every criminal attacking him. One terrified criminal, L, tried to flee, but Rawl's speed allowed him to hurt him with a single slash. The crowd, amazed by Rawl's sword skills, heard Lord Albert praise R and declare Rawl would join him in the next battle. Honored, Rawl vowed to deliver great results. A messenger then informed Rawl that the governor found no villages in the barren lands after scouting. Rawl laughed, knowing Luke's Westland couldn't support a village, and wondered why he was concerned about Luke, assuming they'd never meet again. Rawl regretted not seeing Luke's rumored death. The messenger added that Count Pajada's house couldn't find Solen, prompting an annoyed Rawl to warn the Count against hiding her. Rawl then planned for the events after winter, expecting a massive battle unlike any before. If House Albert won, Lord Albert would gain more land, and Rawl would take over Albert's current territory, ruling the vast region. Meanwhile, in the village, Luke felt the chill as snow piled up and temperatures dropped. After checking his abilities, Luke discovered a defrosting feature, perfect for winter. Pleased, he cleared snow from the roads, easing traders' journeys. The wasteland's winter was harsh, and the village, north of Albert's territory near the mountains, saw heavy snow. Traders thanked Luke for clearing the roads, as reaching the wasteland was tough in winter. Since trading began, merchants had prospered, attracting more settlers to the village. However, with every arrival came a goodbye. Luke oversaw the elven village's smooth rebuilding, but elves who loved the village were sad despite the rapid progress. Luke recalled Philia, a villager upset about her upcoming departure, and removed her villager status. At the bat house, two old men chatted pleasantly until an elf joined them. Startled, they stood and covered themselves, thinking a woman had entered the men's bath, but soon realized the elf was male. The elf squeezed between them and shared the story of his village's fate. The elf explained how they ended up in Luke's village, praising its greatness. The two old men, intrigued, imagined the mystical and majestic elven village. Having heard elves carefully tend to forests and natural springs, they felt disappointed when the elf preferred Luke's village over the forest. The elf shared that some elves were rebuilding their village, but he vowed to stay in Luke's village, excitedly telling the old men they'd celebrate once he became a villager. The old men were surprised by this revelation about the elves, but all agreed Luke's village lived up to its rumors. The elves had lived quietly in the forest, avoiding other species, presenting themselves as a noble race that cherished nature. In truth, they hid from many natural enemies to survive. After finding Luke's village, a safer and more convenient place, the elf decided not to return to his village. However, he knew the chief wouldn't allow him to stay, so he planned to win over the villagers to plead for him. Feeling fortunate, the elf used his charm attractiveness to impress the villagers. Displaying himself publicly, he earned many compliments and believed he'd secured his place. Unfortunately, his new display in the streets led Mima to arrest him for public indecency, landing him in jail. Leonatus, hearing of this, apologized to Luke, assuming it was a cultural misunderstanding. Luke simply asked the elf not to repeat the act. Ashamed, Leonatus questioned the elf, who explained he only wanted to live in the village. Luke, overhearing, said it wouldn't be an issue for them to stay as the village was built by immigrants. He advised them to think carefully about staying, as it wasn't an easy choice. Leonidas gathered the elves and announced that those wishing to stay could remain behind Luke, while those wanting to return to the forest should follow him. Shocked, Leonidas saw no one step forward to leave. Despite expecting at least one or two to stay, he couldn't believe all would abandon their roots. As the elves praised the village's benefits, Nilia whispered that Luke was cute and the elves agreed. When Philia urged her father that the village was safe with him to protect it, Leonidas, surprised she'd stay, admitted he also wanted to remain. Luke welcomed 238 elves, led by Leonidas. As spring arrived, the elven village's rebuilding finished. While Luke helped others, he received a message from Satan that a group was approaching from the east. Luke was puzzled, as the east held only mountain ranges. Based on their talk, Satan speculated the group wasn't human but likely dwarves, skilled in forging and craftsmanship. When Luke met the group, a dwarf named Dolan introduced himself. After Luke shared he was the village chief, he noticed the other dwarves whispering about him. When Luke asked why they came, Dolan explained they'd lived in mountain caves since their ancestors were driven to the frontier, but a monster recently appeared, forcing them to flee. With nowhere to go, they wandered and spotted Luke's village from the mountains, hoping for food. Luke wondered if the dwarves, like the elves, faced persecution despite their experience with humans. Suddenly, Philia appeared and told Luke the dwarves deserved their fate. As Philia and the dwarves saw each other, she revealed their races clashed, explaining the dwarves once sought world domination but faced divine punishment, causing their nation's collapse. Neither knew what the punishment entailed. After assessing them, Luke offered the dwarves a place in the village. Though Philia was initially upset, she trusted Luke's kindness and stayed quiet. The dwarves, wary, questioned if Luke had ulterior motives, but he explained the village thrived on diversity and welcomed all races. Luke showed them facilities while they waited for food. Seeing people gathered, the dwarves asked if it was a forge, but Luke clarified it was a public bathhouse. After explaining its purpose, the dwarves, assuming it was perverse to bathe publicly, felt nervous. After exploring, they chose to stay, preferring the underground passage. Luke, surprised but understanding their cave-dwelling, sun-averse nature, used his abilities to make the passage livable. The dwarves were stunned by the instant rooms Luke created and admired his gift. Milia and Tyr had to calm Philia, who disliked the dwarves living in a tunnel linked to the elven village. At the feast, the dwarves were amazed by the village's high-quality alcohol. The dwarves were amazed when two villagers mentioned the variety of alcohol available. As entertainment began, a villager noticed a silent dwarf who suddenly roared, sparking liveliness among the dwarves after drinking. Luke and Philia were stunned by the dwarves' drunken behavior. The next morning, Dolan woke up naked and furious when Philia accused them of overdrinking and causing chaos. Seeking Luke's support, Dolan and the dwarves slowly recalled the previous night's events. When Dolan tried to confirm with Luke, they were shocked when Luke asked them to drink only underground in the future. Embarrassed, the dwarves realized they caused the prior night's mayhem, and Luke couldn't believe they were dancing with faces painted on their stomachs. After checking everyone's loyalty status, Luke was pleased that no one was unhappy in the village. With more diverse villagers, Luke noted that while dwarves and other refugees had latent gifts, elves already possessed theirs. When Luke asked Philia about these gifts, she explained that elven shamans blessed others through prayer, granting gifts. She noted that few had this ability, as most villagers had archery or albus magic, which focused on light, life, illumination, purification, and healing. Overhearing, a dwarf ran to Philia, boasting that dwarves were natural craftsmen who honed their skills over decades. Initially, Dolan declined unneeded gifts, but soon changed his mind, wanting one. As the dwarves gathered in the church to receive gifts, Luke noticed one dwarf that Donna had low loyalty. Since Donna was underage, Luke couldn't grant her a gift. Approaching her, he asked if she liked weapons, and Donna showed him a stone tablet, wondering if it held ancient script. When Luke asked if she could read it, Donna said the tablet had been in their cave for ages and pointed to a carved human form, prompting Luke to question if it was a golem. Donna clarified it was an old dwarven weapon, leading Luke to wonder if it was the world-ruling armament Philia mentioned. Donna added that it wasn't an ordinary golem, as a person could ride inside it. This fascinated Luke, who found it incredibly cool. Realizing even modern technology couldn't replicate a palatable weapon, Luke speculated the dwarves used a lost, extraordinary technique. Excited, he decided to recreate the golem's shape using his customization ability. Luke shaped the stone wall, completing the golem replica in 5 hours, impressing Donna with its realistic appearance. Using the facility transfer, Luke made the golem move, carrying him and Donna through the village. Villagers felt the ground shake, and were startled to see the golem. But their worries eased when Luke revealed himself and apologized for the commotion. After explaining how he created the golem, the villagers were amazed, though they found its clunky movements amusing as it laughed. Luke and Donna were pleased with their achievement, but soon vomited from the ride's intensity. Luke wondered how riding a real golem would feel, and though Donna didn't know, she vowed to build one someday. Luke sensed that once Donna received her gift, she might succeed. When he asked why she wanted to make weapons, Donna explained that their weakness, despite hiding underground, led to their expulsion from their homes, and weapons could help them fight enemies. Luke realized he'd developed an aversion to military force, partly because he disliked fighting. He had replaced the pain of exile with a rejection of violence, knowing his village would have been destroyed without power. Agreeing with Donna, Luke hoped to use weapons for protection, not harm. Meanwhile, a villager named Camera was fired from the kitchen. Confused by his sudden dismissal, a woman showed him a dish and asked what it was. Camera described it as a creative experiment with new textures and flavors. Unimpressed, she rejected his innovation, unwilling to waste food. As the village grew, daily life became more refined, with villagers expressing themselves through businesses to display their skills, though some struggled to utilize their abilities. Seeing Camera's dejection, Luke asked what happened, and Camera shared feeling worthless despite his gift. Luke, recalling a place of interest, led Camera and Selene to the watchtower, pointing out a rocky western area on the village map he couldn't access. Wondering if it was claimed or inhabited, Luke saw no need to investigate further since it caused no issues. Dismissing the small area as a labyrinth, Luke piqued Selene's curiosity. She offered to escort Camera there, and when she saw enough signs of a labyrinth, she asked Camera if he noticed anything. Camera felt something odd and ran to the rocks, excitedly calling Selene over after discovering a dungeon. Reporting to Luke, Selene believed they had found an undiscovered or abandoned dungeon. Selene, finding no human traces, believed the dungeon could yield valuable resources. Luke suspected the land belonged to a dungeon master, explaining why he couldn't access it as part of the village. Philia shared that legends described dungeons as divine games, governed by rules and offering treasures as the ultimate prize for those brave enough to conquer them. Luke found the idea exciting, but Selene stressed they'd need to prepare, noting the dungeon's narrow, complex layout. Philia suggested a small group would suffice. Thrilled at the chance to explore, Luke assigned Selene and Philia for offense, No for defense to carry supplies, and Gorp for his immense strength. For healing, Philia chose Sophia, skilled in white magic, which she considered vital. Luke entrusted Camera with leading the exploration, relying on his labyrinthine search ability. He also selected Saya for her danger-sensing gift, but was surprised when she declined, citing her need to watch the children. Saya promised to find another with the same gift. Luke and Selene felt people undervalued gifts, taking them for granted. Saya approached Mako to join the dungeon exploration. Meanwhile, Selene saw Milia crying, fearing separation from Luke. When Selene clarified Luke wouldn't join them, he was stunned. Selene explained that dungeons were hurtly even for seasoned adventurers, and Luke was better off staying in the village. Luke insisted he'd retreat at the first sign of danger, but Selene, looming over him, reminded him others had made the same promise and perished. She comforted the disappointed Luke, promising to bring back plenty of monster meat. As the group entered the dungeon, they marveled at its intricate passages, determined not to get lost. Gorp panicked, disoriented, and Selene asked Camera for direction. Using his gift, Camera listened to sounds and pointed to the best path. Hearing something ahead, Selene and Philia readied for combat. Facing a blood wolf, Philia shot out its eye, and Selene delivered a crushing blow, defeating it. Noticing Marco's unease, Selene asked what was wrong. Marco felt an odd premonition. Their attention shifted as a scream revealed another blood wolf behind Sophia, just as Philia aimed her arrow. Philia was stunned when the merging wall struck the blood wolf, followed by multiple golems toppling it, confusing her further. Alarmed, Selene used her ice gift to freeze the wolf in place, recognizing the attack as similar to Luke's. A team member recalled Luke riding a golem recently, suggesting he sent them from the village to assist. Selene, however, heard Luke's gasp nearby and, reaching into Gort's bag, pulled Luke out, confirming her suspicion. She scolded him for the dungeon's dangers, frustrated by his recklessness. Luke apologized, explaining he planned to leave if he sensed danger but missed his chance. Inside the dungeon, he discovered he could claim any area as part of the village, regardless of its owner, allowing unlimited facility creation. Selene sighed, reluctantly accepting his presence, and they took the well-preserved blood wolf hide, which amazed Luke for its rare condition. Marco warned that the ominous feeling returned, signaling stronger monsters ahead. Selene ordered non-combatants to the center, Luke grew alarmed seeing a minotaur approach, but was surprised when Gord and others called it minotaur beef, excited for its delicious meat. Noel praised its tender of melt-in-the-mouth quality, perfect for eating more. Gord apologized to Luke, admitting he was tired of orc meat, which Selen noted they'd had in abundance. With Selen's lead, the group charged the minotaur, planning a barbecue that night. Meanwhile, a fairy, the great dungeon master, awoke, sensing a change and believing explorers had arrived. Planning to perform her role, she was startled by emergency sirens signaling dungeon erosion. Shocked, she saw Luke's group barbecuing, unaware he could build facilities like houses and apartments inside. Marco noted people could live normally in the dungeon, and Luke clarified he could only build within a 50-meter range of where he'd been. Philia believed Luke's gift could revolutionize exploration, and Selen realized they might not need to return to the village to unload items. The confused fairy watched as the group resumed their mission, entering a room filled with bad bats and saber snakes. Philia and Selen swiftly took out the flying bats, while Noel raised his shield to protect the others. Gord grew frustrated as the overwhelming number of bats became too much to handle. With more bats approaching, Luke quickly built a hut for the team to take shelter in. After shutting the door, the group was stunned by their predicament. Gord thanked Luke but wondered what to do next. Selen reassured him, revealing her plan to use ice magic to drive the monsters away. Casting ice magic outside, she explained that persistent use would make the bats retreat. As the bats began to withdraw, the fairy, observing, realized the situation was dire for her dungeon. Emerging from the hut, the team saw most monsters had fled and continued their exploration, curious about what creatures they'd face next. Spotting a massive door, Luke sensed something unique, and Selen speculated it led to the boss monster's room. She explained that defeating the boss would clear the dungeon, though boss monsters were far stronger than others. Luke was surprised they'd reached the end so soon, but Philia laughed, noting their elite group made quick work of the dungeon. She added that while the boss was formidable, rumor held that destroying the dungeon's core granted a mysterious gift-like power. Luke, unaware of alternative dungeon clearing methods, was eager to try for the reward. Opening the door, they faced two minotaurs. Initially seeing them as the beef they'd eaten, the group reconsidered, recognizing these minotaurs might be far tougher. Selen led the charge, Philia readied her arrow, and Noel bolstered defense. Gord was shocked at how fast they defeated the minotaurs, noting they weren't much different from others despite their strength. Spotting a treasure chest, Luke approached, wondering if he could open it. Marco, sensing no danger, confirmed it wasn't a trap. Opening it, Luke and Gord were underwhelmed by a mere steel sword. Luke didn't mind, valuing the dungeon experience and seeing the sword as a keepsake. Philia intervened, reminding Luke that dungeons follow strict rules, including rewards matching the challenge's difficulty. She stressed that disproportionate rewards shouldn't be accepted, as dungeons must adhere to these principles and explorers decide their worth. When Luke asked what happened if they rejected the reward, Philia explained the dungeon master would guide them, either by revealing a path or appearing. Luke and Gord understood, closing the chest. After waiting, they grew disappointed as nothing happened. Camera alerted Luke to a small path behind them, leading to the dungeon master. Philia, shocked, suspected the dungeon master was avoiding them entirely. Rushing down the stairs, the fairy laughed, claiming she hadn't broken any rules, but was stunned by how quickly Luke's group cleared the dungeon. Noting Philia's extensive dungeon knowledge, the fairy was frustrated, unable to prepare a proper reward in the deserted dungeon. She believed dungeons should feature heroic struggles by handsome adventurers, ideally locked in a room for drama, to make her dungeon famous. For now, she thought it impossible and assumed the team had given up and left after she napped. To her shock, Celine appeared, followed by the others. Curious how they entered, the fairy was floored when Luke explained they widened the narrow passage. Seeing the dungeon core, Philia asked if they should destroy it, alarming the fairy who'd rip if the core broke. Pouting, the fairy was upset with the events, and Luke apologized for using his ability. Feeling it was unfair, the fairy snapped, arguing Luke's actions didn't justify disrupting her dungeon. Philia retorted that the fairy exploited a loophole first, and she had destroyed the dungeon regardless if Luke hadn't altered the path. Surprised to learn the dungeon master was a fairy, Luke exchanged greetings. The fairy, calling herself cute, admitted she wanted to offer a grander reward, but could only manage a steel sword in the deserted dungeon. A shame she hid. Luke, hoping for a dark tale, asked about the rewards linked to the dungeon's state. The fairy explained that more visitors earned her dungeon points to create rewards, traps, and monsters. But clearing the dungeon too soon left her unprepared as now. Finding similarities, Luke shared his gift, explaining he needed points to build village facilities. Confused by village points, The fairy wondered if Luke's power came from dungeons. Furious, she accused him of not only breaching her room, but eroding her dungeon. Luke was amazed she sensed the changes. The fairy clarified that she and the dungeon were one, like body and spirit, making any alteration to her dungeon immediately noticeable. The fairy shared her terror when part of her dungeon was overtaken, prompting Luke to apologize. Understanding her fear, he restored the area and apologized again, realizing he couldn't undo changes once they became his territory. This only infuriated the dungeon master further, enraged at her dungeon being altered, and she demanded they leave. Selen and the others grew confused by the exchange. When Luke asked if the seized area was beyond her control, the fairy, sensing it still obeyed her, deemed it fine since Luke couldn't reverse his changes. Instead, she asked a favor. Her dungeon, unchallenged since its creation, was boring, and she wanted Luke to bring people to develop it. The team wasn't surprised no one had explored it, given its remote location. And Selen noted that their success would make it easier for others to defeat respawning monsters. To attract visitors, Luke proposed to Barrett moving the entire village, clarifying they wouldn't abandon it, but relocate it intact. Since dungeons grow with more visitors, merging the village with the dungeon would benefit both, providing materials and items. Luke believed his facility transfer could move the village, but recalled severe motion sickness from a prior attempt. To avoid this, he sought a smoother method and instructed the team to gather villagers to discuss solutions. Testing ideas, they learned that avoiding walking-like motion could minimize shaking. Donna, concerned about rocky terrain, suggested trialing a village model facility. Using telepathy, Luke warned villagers of the move, advising them to stay inside and hold on for safety. The move succeeded without disturbing even the communication officer. A merchant, thrilled at potential profits from valuable items, was stunned to see the village sliding, growing nervous until Luke's voice urged him to step back, assuring him roads would reconnect post-move. After completion, Luke thanked the villagers. The dungeon master, confused, noted that linking the village underground wouldn't generate dungeon points. Luke revealed his plan, relocating the dwarves' homes into the dungeon. Seeing the dwarves' excitement about living there, the fairy agreed their presence would generate daily points but questioned their safety in the dangerous dungeon. Luke assured the dungeon master he'd strengthen the area to protect the dwarves. As the dwarves began relocating their homes, the fairy was amazed by the influx of people, anticipating a rapid increase in dungeon points. Luke advised her to inform Dolan of any issues so he could be notified. The fairy thanked Luke, inviting them to visit the dungeon anytime, though the dwarves were mildly offended when she asked Luke to bring handsome guys. After reconnecting the roads, Luke apologized to the merchant for the delay, noting that despite the village's new location, there were no major issues. Days later, Millie approached Luke to show him something. Seeing abundant food, Luke assumed a festival and asked if it was a special occasion. Millie clarified it was the one-year anniversary of the village's founding, a feast celebrating Luke's legacy. Unveiling her surprise, Millie revealed a statue of Luke with an angry expression, urging the crowd to cheer. Confused, Luke asked for an explanation as villagers chanted his name. Millie admitted she'd secretly crafted the statue with the dwarves' skilled craftsmanship to honor him. The dwarves asked if Luke liked it, hoping he was pleased. Speechless, Luke simply thanked them. Millie then presented a book chronicling Luke's journey, leaving him stunned that his villagers had written a legend about him. Puzzled by their enthusiasm, Luke learned from Millie that Mr. Tottle, with a literary gift, authored the book. Thrilled to use his talent, Luke realized the statue and book gave everyone a sense of pride. When Milia and Tottle shared plans to publish more books for wider audiences, Luke secretly hoped they'd reconsider, though he kept quiet. Reading the book, he was shocked by words he never said. Sighing, Selen told Milia she misunderstood Luke, explaining the book's grandiose quotes didn't fit him. She described Luke as unreliable yet capable of facing any foe when needed. Luke, thinking Selen was joking, suggested Tottle write something thrilling, like the excitement of riding the golem. Luke described the thrill of riding the golem, but Tottle mistook it for a comedic angle, missing Luke's intent. Excited, Milia and Tottle brainstormed diverse stories, even proposing a spin-off. Unhappy, Luke asked if he had to be the book's model. Nima advised that being admired was both a blessing and a burden. Setting aside Milia and Tottle's plans, Luke focused on celebrating with everyone as the festive night continued. In a distant forest, a mysterious creature sensed an intrusion, curious about who disturbed its sleep. The next day, Luke received a message congratulating him for surpassing 3,000 villagers, leveling his village to 7. With spring's arrival, the village grew further, its central area, called the village, expanding to include the wilderness, northern forest, and eastern mountains. Reviewing new facility options, Luke found them all appealing and pondered where to begin. Examining his new skills, he was surprised to see his village appraisal level had increased, offering more detailed but complex data. Noticing the criminal tendencies option, Luke deemed it essential. A sudden screech alerted him to another invasion. Suspecting a monster due to its size, Luke telepathically contacted Satan, reporting a massive creature approaching from the border and ordering him to warn everyone. Staring skyward, Luke initially thought it was a lizard-like monster, but its full reveal screamed dragon. Philia, arriving after the alert, identified it as a tree dragon, a plant-based mimic of true dragons. Confirming it lacked a real dragon's aggression, she cautioned Luke to stay vigilant. Tree dragons, which absorb nutrients from soil and rarely move, puzzled Philia by leaving the forest for the wilderness. Sensing trouble, she warned Luke that the enormous tree dragon, heading straight for them, was unbeatable. Luke ordered everyone to seek underground shelter. As villagers fled, Luke, nervous, was confused when the tree dragon halted. Hiding for an hour with Sullen and Philia, they wondered why it stopped in their field.